You've arrived. I thought about you, more than once actually. And I'm not going to lie, I drifted. Somewhere deep inside a mind that doesn't belong to me, but feels strangely familiar. Yours. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because something wants to be heard tonight. A memory buried in silence, a truth worn thin by time and fear. They call me Mr. Unknown, though names don't matter much, not from where I was made. And if you found this place, then maybe you were meant to. Before I begin, tell me something. Have you ever had the feeling that something is missing, like you forgot a place you've been to, but can't prove it ever existed? A name on the tip of your tongue, a road that doesn't appear on the map. You tell people about it. They say you imagined it, but you remember the sounds, the smell of the air, even the faces. That's where tonight's story comes from. A man on a long drive, just trying to get home. A town he found by accident, or maybe it found him. His name was Connor. He was a father, a husband, and up until a week ago, he was also a son. His dad passed suddenly, heart attack they said. They hadn't spoken much in recent years. Time does that, distance. But when the call came, Connor didn't hesitate. He packed a bag, told his wife and daughter he'd only be gone for a night. His daughter, Lena, wanted to go with him. She was 18, close to her grandfather. His wife insisted too, said the drive was too long, too late, too heavy for one person, but Connor refused. Some things, he told them, you just have to do alone. He left just before sunset. The road to his father's house was one he knew well. He'd taken it countless times over the years. A steady path through the country. It wound through old mining towns, some forgotten, some barely hanging on. The land had its own rhythm, its own quiet. The sky dimmed fast. Shadows stretched across the road like reaching arms. He turned the radio off, thought about the last time he'd seen his dad. A cold handshake, a half smile. Too much. Unsaid. Guilt wasn't something Connor liked to admit, but as the miles stretched on, he couldn't help but think about his father. How many times had he ignored his calls? Too busy, too tired, too something. He told himself he'd visit next week, that he'd make the time. But now his father was gone, and the last time they spoke, there wasn't even a proper goodbye. He'd walked away from that conversation like it was any other, like he could come back and pick up the thread any time. But now it was too late. Too late for what? The question gnawed at him, deeper now, as the town grew closer. The town appeared suddenly, out of nowhere, like it had been hiding behind the fog. Connor slowed down. His headlights swept over the road signs, but something felt wrong. Same highway, same curve. Yet, something had changed. The familiar town was gone. In its place stood this, Daring. The sign was old, paint chipped, but the name was clear in the lights. Welcome to Daring. Population 1,148. But it didn't make sense. He'd driven this route too many times. He knew every small town, every turn. But Daring, this was different. The streets were empty. Not a single car. Not a light on in the houses. Buildings stood tired, like they'd seen too much and never moved forward. Connor parked at the side of the road, headlights cutting through the gloom. The diner's neon sign buzzed faintly, but no one. The trees, heavy with fog, seemed to watch him. It felt like the town was waiting for something. Maybe for him. This isn't where my father lived. He was sure of it. He turned off the engine, stepped into the cold. The silence wrapped around him like wet cloth. He couldn't drive away. Not yet. With every step toward the diner, a knot twisted tighter in his chest. Something about this place felt like it had always been here, waiting, and Connor had just stepped into its heart. He glanced at his phone, but there was no signal. Nothing. The GPS was still off, and even the time seemed to freeze. His watch showed 3:15 a.m. That was the exact moment his father had passed away. Connor swallowed hard, his throat dry. Too much time had passed since that call. Too much silence between him and the old man he'd been too busy to call back. Too many things left unsaid, and now it was too late. Too late for goodbyes. A pang of guilt twisted inside him. Was this his punishment? Shaking the thought away, Connor tried to refocus. The fog thickened around him. Everything was too still. The road ahead of him, his father's road, felt more like a maze than a highway now. Without thinking, he started walking, slowly, unsure of where he was going, but determined to make sense of this place. As he moved further down the street lights flickered and hummed. The light was dim, flickering like it was on the edge of dying out completely. The wind was now colder, sharper, and the town was starting to feel like it was closing in on him. The houses on either side of the road were still abandoned, their windows dark, the doors shut tight. But then, something caught his eye, a shadow in one of the windows. It was there for a brief moment, just a flicker. But Connor's heart skipped. He stopped dead in his tracks, his breath catching in his chest. He turned slowly, looking at the house again. The shadow was gone, but the hairs on the back of his neck stood up. He hadn't imagined it. He was sure of it. There was someone inside. Connor took a hesitant step forward, his legs heavy. The town felt colder now, the fog thickening. The shadows seemed to stretch toward him, pulling him closer. Just then, a low creaking sound broke the silence. Connor froze, his pulse quickening. It came from behind him, a sound like the hinges of an old door slowly opening. He turned around and found himself staring down the main road. The street seemed to stretch forever, vanishing into the mist. But there was something wrong about it. He couldn't put his finger on it, but it didn't feel like the town was just empty. It felt like the town was alive, and it was waiting for him. As he walked down the road again, trying to shake off the feeling of being followed, he came to a small memorial park. It had an old stone bench in the center, surrounded by a few worn statues of men and women from long ago. There was an inscription on one of the stone markers, but it was so faded Connor couldn't read it. Still, something about the park unsettled him. He looked around, but there were no people, only more fog, creeping like fingers over the stone. And then he heard it, a voice, soft, almost a whisper, coming from the shadows. "Leave, now." The words barely reached his ears, but they were clear enough. He spun around, his breath caught in his throat. There was nothing. The air around him seemed to grow heavier, and the feeling of being watched intensified. His heart raced. It wasn't just the man in the diner or the strange town anymore. Something was happening here, something he didn't understand. The town wasn't just strange, it was actively pushing him out. It was alive in a way he couldn't explain. With each step, Connor's anxiety deepened. He needed to get out. He turned quickly to head back to his car, but then the fog thickened. He couldn't see the street in front of him. The air became damp and oppressive, as though it was closing in around him. Then, he saw lights. 2 pairs of headlights, like eyes, cutting through the fog. But they were moving in reverse, coming closer, faster, like they were chasing him. Connor's stomach dropped. Something was coming for him. The air was suddenly so thick, he could barely breathe. It was too late. He had to leave. But as he turned to run back, the fog pressed in even harder. The sound of tires screeching echoed in the distance, followed by a sudden silence that swallowed up the night. He glanced over his shoulder, his pulse thumping in his ears, and for a split second, the fog parted just enough for him to see the sign again. He stumbled back in shock as the words burned into his mind. Welcome to Daring. Population 1,149. It was a town he couldn't remember entering. A town that had just appeared before he could react. The fog rushed forward, swallowing the sign, the road, and him entirely. It was like being engulfed by the breath of some vast, unseen creature. Connor's chest tightened. Connor's mind silenced. Days later, authorities found Connor's car abandoned on a narrow forest road, miles from the nearest highway. No signs of a struggle, no footprints, no damage. The engine had gone cold long before they arrived. There is no record of a town named Daring anywhere in the state or in the country. Search parties combed the woods. Drones flew overhead. Cadaver dogs were brought in. Nothing. Not a single clue. Not a single trace. Just a quiet road. That led nowhere. And a man who vanished like smoke. Grief doesn't knock. It just walks in. 1 week. Lena lost her grandfather. The next, her father was gone too. No answers. No closure. Just a phone call. An empty car. And silence. Where his voice used to be. She sat on the front steps for hours that night, clutching his old flannel jacket, like it still held some part of him. She didn't cry, not at first, just stared into the dark, like maybe he'd walk out of it, like maybe he just got lost on the way home. But what do you do when the road that took someone doesn't even exist? A week passed, then a month, but Lena never stopped looking. And one cold morning, outside the corner store near her school. A man she had never seen before pressed something into her hand. A photo. Old, yellowed, but somehow untouched by time. It showed a place she didn't recognize. But the name etched across the weathered sign in the corner was all too clear. Daring. And though she wouldn't know it yet, the town had already started whispering her name. You stayed. Even after the road vanished. Even after Connor faded. Even after the silence pressed in so loud it felt like it might break you. I wondered if you would. Most don't. But you kept listening. Maybe that's all this place ever wanted. Not a scream, not a prayer, just someone to hear it. They still whisper, you know. In the fog, in the wires, in the space between now and never. You came looking for someone, or something, and maybe it found you. So if the road calls again, don't be afraid. Just remember what brought you here. And know this, some places don't let go. Not really, especially the ones that were waiting for you all along.